The deadly school shooting in San Bernardino, California, and that terrifying message that went out to parents today. Authorities say a man with a gun checked in at the office and headed straight to a classroom. He shot and killed a female teacher, and 2 young students were shot too. Tonight we've learned one has not survived. He then killed himself. Parents rushing to the scene, grief-stricken as they waited for word. Tonight, the police chief now with a possible motive.
Tonight, those troubling images. Young children evacuating an elementary school after shots rang out, crossing a basketball court in formation to get to safety. This girl was there for transitional kindergarten.
I didn't know what was happening, and I just wanted to go home.
Possible active shooter at North Park Elementary.
The emergency calls coming in just before 10:30 in the morning. Authorities say 53-year-old Cedric Anderson told the front desk he had something to drop off for his wife, who was a teacher, then entering the special ed classroom where she taught, shooting and killing his wife, Karen Smith, before turning the gun on himself.
Cedric entered the classroom without saying anything, armed with a large caliber revolver, opened fire on his wife.
Tragically, 2 students caught up in the violence, both shot and rushed to local hospitals by air and ground.
My partner's carrying one out to the front, okay? We believe we have the shooter down inside.
Late word tonight, 8-year-old Jonathan Martinez did not survive. The other student in stable condition. The father of a 2nd grader describes what he did the moment he heard there was a shooting at his daughter's school.
I fell to my knees and started saying Our Fathers and Hail Marys.
Heavily armed officers and SWAT teams rushing to the scene, arriving at North Park Elementary School in San Bernardino in just minutes, as parents flooded to the school looking for answers.
My son is in 2nd grade, and her teacher sent me a message. You can read it.
The school, a crime scene. Some parents able to see their children, but they couldn't reach them, not able to hug them.
Oh my gosh. She doesn't see me, but I can see her. They look like they're all crying, they're all holding hands, and they look very scared.
Row after row of students moving calmly across school grounds, holding hands, getting onto buses, taken to a safe location before being reunited with their families. Tonight, authorities are searching the suspect's home in Riverside, California. Meanwhile, emotional images, parents finding their children after hours of confusion and desperation.
This is a tragic event. It's going to take time for our heads, our hearts to heal.
What are we learning about a possible motive here?
David, tonight, authorities are taking a closer look at the couple's relationship. We've recently learned that the pair was married just 3 short months and that they had recently separated in the last month.
Security is tight outside the Coptic church in the Egyptian city of Tanta after at least 27 were killed and 80 wounded in a bomb attack on Sunday. Another attack in the city of Alexandria claimed the lives of 17 people and injured 48. Both were claimed by ISIL. Officials are doing their best to reassure worshippers. We've started implementing changes to enhance services, he says, and bring in a very high level of security. We're setting up high-level checkpoints around the church. We've deployed security forces to search those coming in and in nearby streets as well. Hundreds of relatives of the victims of Sunday's bombing at Alexandria's Coptic Cathedral are gathering at the monastery of St. Mina for the funerals. Coffins of the 17 people who died were lined up on the tiled square outside the monastery ahead of the service.
ISIS had claimed responsibility and spread fear across the Christian world with threats of more to come.
I think it is a tense time going into Holy Week at any church or large gathering of worshipers.
ISIS has killed far more Muslims than Christians, but its war on Christianity goes back to its founding. Imagining attacks on Rome, photoshopping the ISIS flag over the Vatican. As Pope Francis Sunday deplored the ISIS church attacks, security officials at the Vatican and churches around the world were seeing what they could do to enhance the already high security for the coming Holy Week.
There has been an explosion in southeastern Turkey, and security sources are now saying that several people have been wounded. It happened in the city of Diyarbakir, a largely Kurdish area of the country. You can see that large plume of gray smoke rising over the surrounding buildings. Now, the cause of the explosion is still not clear, but we will bring you details as soon as they emerge from Diyarbakir.
Tonight, the Secretary of State is carrying a hardline message to Syria's chief ally, Russia, and Margaret Brennan is in Moscow.
On the eve of Secretary Tillerson's Moscow visit, the White House vowed to respond if Bashar al-Assad continued to use chemical weapons.
The sight of people being gassed and blown away by barrel bombs ensures that if we see this kind of action again, we hold open the possibility of future action.
Regardless of whether Russia was complicit here, or whether they were simply incompetent, or whether they got outwitted by the Bashar al-Assad regime, you would have to ask the Russians that question.
You know, wouldn't it be a great thing if we could actually get along with Russia?
Despite Mr. Trump's vow to improve relations, Tillerson faces tense meetings Wednesday with Russia's top diplomat and possibly President Vladimir Putin himself.
Russia says U.S. missile strikes against Syria last week show a total lack of willingness from Washington to cooperate on the war-torn country. Speaking to reporters, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also said renewed calls for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down will not help resolve the crisis. Peskov added that Moscow sees no alternative to end the conflict other than the Geneva and the Astana peace talks. The Kremlin spokesperson has also revealed the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will not meet President Vladimir Putin during his visit to Russia later this week.
The UK's foreign minister meets his US counterpart Rex Tillerson on the fringes of the G7 meeting in Italy. Growing tensions with North Korea, Libya, Iran and the pressing need to present a united front on the conflict in Syria are top of the agenda. Boris Johnson says further sanctions against senior figures are possible.
The Russians, they have a choice, and that choice is to stick like glue to the Assad regime, with all that entails, that toxic regime that poisons its own people and indeed is poisoning the reputation of Russia, or to work with the rest of the world.
Dozens of protesters have clashed with police as they try to break through the security cordons sealing off the G7 talks in Italy. Scuffles broke out as marchers chanting "Police go away" were stopped by a line of officers in the central Italian city of Lucca. Officers wielding batons managed to push the protesters back. However, media report that 6 or 7 officers were slightly injured during the scuffles. We're here because the G7 meeting of foreign ministers is basically a meeting that plans wars, he says. I don't want to hear their rhetoric, ideology or what they represent. What's happening every day in the Mediterranean is a clear sign that what they do is warmongering.
The situation on the Korean Peninsula is growing increasingly tense following the deployment of a U.S. naval strike group to the region. And now Pyongyang is warning it's ready for war. Well, the Carl Vinson strike group headed to the peninsula during the weekend after cancelling a planned trip to Australia, and the show of force comes as Washington signalled it may act to shut down Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities. And the DPRK official KCNA news agency cites a foreign ministry spokesperson saying this proves that the U.S. reckless moves for invading have reached a serious phase. He says the country is ready to react to any mode of war desired by the U.S.
The diplomatic rift between Turkey and Europe is seemingly widening, following another provocative statement by the Turkish president. Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that Europe is collapsing.
They said a century ago that we were the sick man. Now they are the sick man. Europe is collapsing.
Well, relations soured after a number of European states refused to allow Turkish officials to host rallies abroad prior to a referendum this week, which could see Erdogan take over prime ministerial powers to add to his presidential rule.
Turkey's integration with the EU has been a complicated story. Is it likely to ever join the Union?
Nobody in Europe, at least very few people, let's put it that way, had the real intention, the
honest commitment to Turkish accession. France has always had large majorities against Turkish accession. In Germany, 80% of the people are opposed. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, much the same. There is no democratic support for Turkish accession. And so we, as Europeans, have also been dishonest with our Turkish friends by telling them they can join eventually, but at the end of the day, everybody knew that there was no majority in sight for something like that.
But does Turkey, which has been criticised over its human rights record, still want to join the EU?
We should all realize that Turkey has imprisoned more journalists than either China or Iran. And that tells us a lot about the state of the freedom of speech in that country. The arrests of people who are said to be related to the coup attempt, 47,000 over the past few months. All of this is not, compatible with our standards for the rule of law. So, in fact, Turkey has already given up on looking towards Europe for its standards, its values and its policies.
And we'll start this hour with news from France, where more than 350 prison guards have blocked access to the largest prison in Europe. We're looking at live pictures at the moment. They have set up barricades at the facility in the suburbs of Paris in protest against recent violence against 6 guards there. As you can see, a very heavy police presence. There has been violence over the last half hour or so. They've been holding up signs reading overpopulation, understaffing, danger. The jail is currently filled to 180% capacity and is said to need 150 more guards to control the population there. The authorities have deployed large numbers of police, as you can see there, to disperse the demonstration, but it's quickly turned ugly.
Home to as many as 1,500 migrants in northern France, going up in smoke. Half of the Grande South camp near Dunkirk destroyed by a vicious fire on Monday night. The blaze began after skirmishes between residents earlier in the evening. At least 6 migrants were wounded after scuffles and a knife fight, according to firefighters and authorities. Riot police intervened, which led to more clashes between security forces and up to 150 residents. One of the injured migrants was knocked over by a car on a nearby motorway and was in a critical condition, police said. 3 others had stab wounds. The fire then tore through the wooden huts, forcing hundreds to relocate to makeshift shelters. Most of these migrants are fleeing violence and hardship in North Africa and the Middle East. It's thought many of those at this camp are Kurds. The population's grown recently with a surge of arrivals from Afghanistan. Last week, a group tried to block the motorway, determined to stop the traffic and clamber onto trucks in the hope of crossing the channel to reach Britain.
Opposition supporters have once more taken to the streets in Venezuela to protest about the country's grave economic crisis. 4 nationwide protests in the last 10 days have degenerated into clashes between youths throwing stones and security forces spraying crowds with tear gas.
The global religious landscape is set for some major changes in the near future. According to a study by Pew Research Institute, the number of babies born to Muslim women will surpass the number of Christian births by 2035. The study, published April 5th, goes on to say that Muslims will most likely be the world's fastest growing major religious group in the coming decades. Between 2015 and 2060, the global Muslim population is projected to increase by 70%. The number of Christians is expected to grow by just half that at 34%. Researchers point to age demographics as the main reason for the growth trends. A large part of the Muslim population is within childbearing years. In contrast, many Christian populations are elderly, especially in places like Europe. Furthermore, the study estimates all other major religious groups will see a decline in growth over the next few decades. Television actor has challenged the Emmy's gendered awards categories. Asia K. Dillon, who plays Taylor Mason on Showtime's Billions, doesn't identify in the traditional male-female system and prefers they, theirs, and them personal pronouns. Variety magazine recently interviewed Dillon about their 2017 Emmy nomination and their exchange with the Television Academy. Dillon wrote the Academy after being considered for a supporting role nomination and asked if the actor and actress categories related to biology or identity and why the distinction mattered at all. According to Dillon, the Academy said, quote, anyone can submit under either category for any reason. Dillon told Variety they chose to be considered in the actor category because it was originally used as a non-gendered term. Dillon said the exchange with the Academy was positive. Meanwhile, MTV Movie and TV Awards announced its nominees April 6th, and men and women will compete against each other in several categories for the first time this year.
Protests erupting last week at Claremont McKenna College in California as pro-law enforcement writer Heather McDonald was set to hold a lecture on war on cops. Listen.
Yeah, nice free speech zone, right? Police had to shut down the event before she could finish speaking.
Heather McDonald is the author of The War on Cops, How the New Attack on Law and Order Makes Everyone Less Safe. There's a picture of her book, and she joins us here live. Describe what happened. What did the protesters say to you, or what could you hear them saying?
Well, I heard them chanting, "F*** the police," you know, KKK. The funniest thing was CMC, racist CMC, as if, you know, this is a school that engages in racial preferences, is as open as possible. But I was kept far away from the protesters because of the threat of violence.
Artificial intelligence that can pick you out in a crowd and then track your every move. Japanese firm Hitachi's new imaging system locks on to at least 100 different characteristics of an individual, including gender, age, hairstyle, clothes, and mannerisms. Hitachi says it provides real-time tracking and monitoring of crowded areas.
Until now, we need a lot of security guards and people to review security camera footage. We developed this AI software in the hopes it would help them do just that.
The system can help spot a suspicious individual or find a missing child, the makers say. So an eyewitness could provide a limited description, with the AI software quickly scanning its database for a match.
In Japan, the demand for such technology is increasing because of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. But for us, we're developing it in a way so that it can be utilized in many different places, such as train stations, stadiums, and even shopping malls.
High-speed tracking of individuals such as this will undoubtedly have its critics. But as Japan prepares to host the 2020 Olympics, Hitachi insists its system can contribute to public safety and security.
素揚げされてるのですごくサクサクしていて嫌な味とかは全くないですね。イメージとしてはエビの揚げたものみたいな感じで。
くにっとした食感が残ってしまうというか。 そうですね。
A new scientific study notes an increase in new flu viruses that might lead to future pandemics. Researchers from the University of New South Wales identified 7 new strains of influenza found in humans between 2011 and 2015. The study, published in the Archives of Public Health on March 27th, identified 19 influenza outbreaks since 1918, including 10 identified as animal-to-human infections. The escalation of new virus strains could increase the risk of virus mutating and spreading from person to person. Researchers noted several explanations for the escalation, including increased global poultry production and urbanization. As noted by study co-author Chow Bui, the large number of viruses circulating among birds increase the likelihood of virus mutation. The study urged health authorities to plan for the likelihood of future pandemics.
A parasite known as rat lungworm is wreaking havoc in Hawaii. The Maui News reports a recent spike in infections caused by the parasite. 6 cases have been reported on Maui in the past 3 months, compared to just 2 in the last decade. Rat lungworm can move into a patient's nervous system and brain, causing a rare type of meningitis. It can even lead to death. There is no treatment. However, most people make a full recovery. Rat lungworm comes from an infection in rats. The rats expel worm larvae in their feces, which is then spread to larger animals, including snails and slugs. Health authorities in the state are advising people to wash their produce and avoid handling snails and slugs without gloves. Hawaii has seen an increase in invasive slug species recently, which some researchers say could be responsible for the rise in rat lungworm infections.
Aerial surveys have found that 2/3 of Australia's Great Barrier Reef have been devastated by back-to-back years of severe coral bleaching. The devastation has raised fears that the natural wonder may not fully recover. Mass bleaching has been recorded on the Great Barrier Reef before, but researchers say 2 events have never occurred in such close proximity. Coral bleaching occurs when abnormal environmental conditions push corals to expel tiny photosynthetic algae, causing them to turn white. Heightened sea temperatures can play a role in the bleaching. The damage was recorded by the Australian Research Council's Centre of Excellence for Coral Reef Studies. The organization has carried out separate studies over the past 2 years.
I, Neil M. Gorsuch, do solemnly swear.
It's official. Neil Gorsuch is a Supreme Court justice.
Congratulations.
Gorsuch was sworn in during a private ceremony, then took the oath publicly in the Rose Garden, becoming the 101st Associate Justice.
And I promise you that I will do all my powers permit to be a faithful servant of the Constitution and laws of this great nation.
His confirmation became a big win for President Trump, who attended the ceremony.
And I can say this is a great honor. And I got it done in the first 100 days. That's even nice.
After a contentious filibuster in the Senate broken by the so-called nuclear option, Neil Gorsuch replaced Antonin Scalia in what was the closest vote ever.
The nomination is confirmed.
Now with 9 total justices, the court holds a conservative majority.
Vengo para consentirlo un ratito, porque creo que todos los días darles croqueta o alimento para perro es muy fastidioso para ellos, y que conozcan o que tengan un sabor diferente en su paladar creo que es algo bueno para ellos.